A normal Kenyan, you'd start worrying about education for your children, but now we are retrogressively going back to the days whereby people are struggling to earn a living in terms of the basic needs. And when we get to that problem, to that situation, we realize we have a big problem. So if we don't address measures that are going to be put in place to address the cost of living, then we might be heading in the wrong direction. And if that's the case, then we'll have a very big problem in terms of the next time the debate of finance bill comes and all those revenue raising measures. Yes.
In your constituency, you are dealing with yet another problem of residents who are almost being displaced because of titling of land.
Yes.
Is it something you would want to be captured? So much so that a title deed in the Republic of Kenya means something.
And that is another issue I want to address, because remember, if you've followed that case, we have someone who came up and said they have the original title and they claim never to have sold the land to Mr. Kirima. Now, remember, we might end up with a settlement with the residents settling with Kirima and then another owner coming up with another title. The main thing would be for the Ministry of Lands and the National Lands Commission to come up and explain or tell us who is the rightful owner of the land before we even proceed to having a settlement afterwards. Because imagine a situation whereby the residents settle with one person and another person comes up and claims to be the owner of the land. It's a big problem we've had in the past, but it's something that needs to be resolved, because in that particular area we have over 30,000 families that are going to be affected by that eviction. Yes.
That's it. We'll reconnect after the State of a Nation, see whether some of your expectations have been addressed.
Thank you
very much. Mheshimiwa Ronald Karauri, the Member of Parliament for Kasarani. Largely the conversation is on the cost of living and what the President needs to do. And much of it majors on, the cost of commodities, the fuel prices, obviously triggered by the increase in fuel prices. And this is generally the conversation that most members of Parliament really expect that the President will touch on. Will he? Obviously, that is in a matter of minutes. We'll be able to know once the President arrives in the chambers. What I can report from here is that quite a number of members of Parliament have made their way to the chambers and, taking the sitting space so that when the President arrives, they will already be seated and ready to listen to the President as he makes his State of a Nation address. Will it be 1 hour? Will it be 30 minutes? Will it be 45 as has been practiced? That is obviously something else that we expect to see. But the import of this is that immediately after that, once he's done with the State of a Nation address, is that he will table reports and hand them to the Speaker. They will form the basis of a conversation for the next 2 weeks or 3, where the National Assembly as well as the Senate will be debating the reports that President William Ruto is going to table. Much of it concerns national security, how his government is faring so far in terms of implementation of its manifesto and its promises to Kenyans, and of course the foreign obligation, the foreign policy obligation for the Republic of Kenya. How are we honoring our foreign policy obligations? Of course, like you've heard, we have had an issue in Israel. We are dealing with the Hamas versus the Israel Defense Forces, as a foreign policy is a matter where Kenya has not really pronounced itself fully. Remember, there's an African Union position on the crisis or the conflict in Israel. As you're talking, there's still another existing between Russia and Ukraine, quite unfolding from that end. And also the Kenyan voice is really needed because it plays in the League of Nations. You'll just remember that Kenya was a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for a period of 1 year, and therefore the position of the Republic of Kenya, particularly the continent, is taken in high regard. How are we relating with our neighbors? Uganda, Tanzania are part of the East African community. How are we implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area? How is the implementation so far, and what are the measures that are being taken by the government of the Republic of Kenya to ensure that becomes a reality? 55 members of the African Union have already signed up to it, but how are we faring in terms of implementation? All that will be tabled by President William Ruto. What is most important is his scorecard 1 year on, because again, there have been claims that because of delays of capitation, school heads want an increase in school fees. Will the President allay those fears here? Because you also remember that yesterday the Minister for Education, that is Ezekiel Mashogu said there will be no increase of school fees. But is that the reality? That is the big question. So members of parliament keep trickling in, and I can also see dignitaries from foreign missions who will be here to listen to the president's speech. Maybe we can quickly grab some of members of parliament who are entering the chambers, get to speak to them a bit as regards what is happening and what their expectations largely are. Most of them are just heading to the chambers. I see the honorable member for West Mugirango making his way to the chamber. We'll grab him very quickly so that we can have a quick conversation. Mheshimiwa, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
You're very much welcome. Asante sana. Your expectations generally as the president makes his way here. What do you expect to hear from his State of the Nation address? Probably you can turn to this side so that we can speak.
No. Oh yes, we want to hear from the president. The budget. State of unemployment in the republic, particularly for the youth who gave him overwhelming support. We want to hear from him what he's doing for the small and micro entities who are believing that the economy will boom up so that they make money out of it. We also want to know from the president what is going to be his size of government, because we are doing a supplementary budget that is reducing the expenditure for the whole country, particularly the executive. We want to see whether the president is giving us a promise of making leaner his size of executive when going forward. And we also want assurance that the industrial parks that have been started all over the republic, there will be continued funding so that they bear fruits. I also want to hear what the president will say about the stalled infrastructure. Because the government took a position that they are not going to start new projects until they complete existing ones. My constituency, West Mugirango, is a victim of that because it doesn't have any ongoing tarmac road. So I want to hear when are we completing all those that are ongoing so that we also I want to hear my president talking about the pending bills of this country. Because the pending bills, as I keep saying, are for that 30% of procurement going to women, persons with disability and youth. When we use these people to supply government and for years they don't get paid, it is a very disturbing thing, and I'm hoping that Mr. President will be telling the legislature what he's going to do about it.
We wish you a good listen. We will reconnect after the speech and get to hear whether the president addresses your concerns. The member of parliament for West Mugirango also speaking to us largely the expectations of the country, and you can imagine and you can understand they are on a high largely because Kenyans have a lot of expectations for this government, and particularly now that it is 1 year on since assuming office, and what is the level of promises and how have they been fulfilled by this administration so far. Those are the big questions that the government is grappling with today as the president makes his way to the chambers to address this bicameral parliament, and like I've told you, what is tabled here will be a subject of debate for the next 2-3 administration. Obviously is a hustler fund, which was a big promise for this administration, that once the hustler fund is available, it will be able to help businesses, more enterprises to be up on their feet, and therefore even access to capital. And you remember just around this year, the president announced the second phase of the hustler fund that will be available now to circles and groups, and that has already been launched by the president. It's part of the key achievements of the administration, or a pre-election pledge that has been fulfilled by this administration. But largely, like it appears to be consensus, is that the huge weight of the high cost of living that continues to rest on the shoulders of Kenyans is the in regards to the war against corruption, that obviously is another center of focus, because the president really has been big on saying what he needs to do in order to deal with the systemic corruption that has plagued government and government systems. But has there been actionable steps towards that, or towards achieving that? That obviously is a big question. And when he tables that report here, it will also be a matter of debate in the chambers. Are there laws that need to be tightened? Are there laws that need to be enacted so that they can assist investigative agencies and the prosecutorial agencies of Kenya to prosecute corruption and get to deal with it once and for all? Those are the big questions in the minds of Kenyans this afternoon. A highly expectant nation that the president will finally months. But members of the National Assembly continue to troop into the Assembly or the Chamber together with their fellow counterparts from the Senate. And you remember, because of space, both houses will be congregating in the chambers. That is the National Assembly chambers and not the Senate chambers. The Senate chambers can only accommodate about 67 people, but generally we will be dealing with about 347 members of parliament, and that will largely be it when all of them congregate in that chamber for the State of the Nation address by President William Ruto. It's only a matter of minutes now before the president addresses the chamber. But what will happen? Once the president arrives, he will only inspect a guard of honor mounted in his honor by the Kenya Defense Forces. And once he's done with inspecting that guard of honor, he will also receive him will be the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Speaker of the Senate, leaders of majority, leaders of minority, and other chambers will receive him, and then he
challenges, but I know he has had a plan for this nation, and I believe that he is going to explain as to how far he has executed the plan. I know he will also talk about agriculture, the effect of the fertilizer that he has given, the stabilization of the economy, and particularly the area of education, like juniors secular education. And there's a lot that we are expecting, particularly his plan for the starting the stored projects, and I believe he has got a plan because he has been working on this plan for some time, and I think that we are looking for a good year coming. It was difficult this year, trying to seal the gaps that have been there and to getting this country back, despite the challenges that are there worldwide. We know we have problems with Ukraine and Russia, Israel, and now Palestine, but we are also hoping that the rains that have come are also not going to put us into more problems. But I am looking forward for a good statement from the head of state.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We wish you a good listen. We'll reconnect after the State of the Nation.
For sure.
Probably get to take stock of what the president has said. So that largely will be the center of the focus as you've conducted. Top of the agenda of what the president is expected to speak about this afternoon. But of course, in the midst of the ongoing rains, the El Nino rains, there's a general expectation that the president will come up with solutions, and particularly activate the disaster response plan for Northeastern Province, or the former Northeastern Province, because Wajir, Garissa, and Mandera. Some of those places have absolutely been marooned by the ongoing floods. But of course, now it's a matter of minutes. We await the arrival of the president. For now, back to your studio.
Where he announced the vision of various rates of government services, where if you have lost...
Very well, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has just arrived at Parliament buildings. Remember, it's a bicameral parliament, meaning that both the MPs and the senators are already inside the building, and any moment now we expect the head of state to be making his way to Parliament. But before he enters Parliament, as you can see there, the Kenya Defence Forces have mounted a guard of honor, which they expect the head of state will be inspecting before he makes his way inside of Parliament. And as all Kenyans, including me, are waiting and eagerly waiting for his speech, we are expecting that the head of state will touch on the scorecard of the Kenya Kwanza government in the last 1 year. A number of things that we are also expecting the head of state to be touching on is the foreign policy. We have seen him in a number of trips. We have seen a number of MPs, a number of prime ministers, a number of envoys come to the country to ensure that. But first things first, let's first of all cross over to Parliament. We are expecting also, we will be reaching out to our editor Edward Kabasa, who is also at Parliament building together with the Bunge team, and also Abdi Aziz are also keeping tabs with what is transpiring there. But I can tell you that the MPs and the senators are already seated. Maybe the last ones are already making their way to the National Assembly, where we expect the head of state is going to be making his State of the Nation address, his first, his inaugural. And you do remember that a couple of years back, when we had already promulgated our constitution in 2010 and started actually using it, President Mwai Kibaki had the scorecard which majorly touched on matters devolution, because we were just setting up counties. When President Uhuru came in, he was the first person actually to start the counties in 2013, which was also a milestone. Now we are with the President William Ruto, who will be expecting to make a State of the Nation address amid a myriad of challenges in the country, including the implementation of the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, the cost of living, the floods that are currently ravaging many parts of the country, and also we expect a number of clarifications in regards to a number of issues of who we expect the head of state will also be making. Let me now hand over to my colleague Edward Kabasa live in Parliament.
Out 4 teketeke hakuwa anaona kitu. Out 4 haraka.
Address a joint sitting of Parliament. This comprises the members of the National Assembly and the members of the Senate. This is going to be the second address by the head of state, President William Ruto. The first time he addressed this house was on 29th of September 2022, when he was opening officially the 13th Parliament. This special broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. My name is Edward Kabasa. I invite you to this live broadcast, which is also available on YouTube, courtesy of the Parliament of Kenya YouTube channel. That means you can watch this address on the go this afternoon, the 9th of November 2023.
The State of the Nation address is delivered in accordance with Article 132, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, which provides for the President to address a special sitting of Parliament once every year and may address Parliament at any other time. Once every year, the President is also expected to report in an address to the nation on all the measures taken and the progress achieved in the realization of the national values referred to in Article 10, and to publish in the Gazette the details of the measures and progress under sub-paragraph. The head of state is further expected to submit a report for debate to the National Assembly on the progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic.